Our focus was on a class that Cal Poly offers called IT 467 Applied Business Operations. This class is the capstone course for the industrial technology major at Cal Poly. In this class, students form groups of 10 to 13 people and simulate an entrepreneurial business venture by creating a startup company from scratch. These students come up with a product concept, go through a prototype phase, select a final design, create a manufacturing strategy, and attempt to sell all their units. Effectively, the students build a startup company from the ground up for the duration of a quarter. The students assume roles within their groups, such as operations manager, engineers, facility supervisor, sales professional, and marketing professional, etc. A project of this scope and scale always brings the students out of their comfort zones and challenges them to refine their interpersonal skills in such a way as they have never previously experienced. Effective communication can make or break a group project, and this is amplified in a group effort of this magnitude. This quarter, there have been some glaring communication errors among all three of the student teams we observed, but one group, referred to here as Group A, has been much worse than the other two. This video will explore some of the communication problems that Group A made, how they impacted the team, how they could have been avoided, and advice for these students to use in the future.
One of the primary issues that we saw was leadership among groups. When initially deciding group leaders, individuals chose those that were most outgoing and the most loud. This is what is known as a trait approach, in which leadership is chosen based off an individual's traits. These traits include intelligence, self-esteem, integrity, openness, and in this case, charisma or extroversion. Charismatic leadership has proven effective in many situations, however, is not a rational choice in all situations. Charismatic leadership can act to unify a group to one goal and increase morale. However, that is not what the IT 467 group needed. Those that were charismatic did not necessarily have the skills or experience to lead their group. Because of this, power imbalances began to distort group cohesion and led to inefficiency overall. This also led to a lack of communication, as some felt their voices were unheard under the supervision of their opinionated leaders. We saw that unsuccessful leadership led to a trickle-down effect in which all aspects of the group's work suffered. Luckily, these issues were fixable.
Many of the groups experienced the phenomenon called "don't shoot the messenger." In this situation, difficult or unpleasant information must be communicated to higher-ups in the business, which may cause anxiety or fear for the employee that has to report this tough information. Many times, we can unwittingly shoot the messenger by becoming angry or frustrated with the information provided to us, and then taking it out on the person who had to report said information. Oftentimes, there's no specific person to blame for the shortcoming or whatever caused the problem, and the messenger is in the closest proximity and therefore endures the fallout from delivering the message. According to the textbook, this phenomenon is called filtering and also falls under the category of providing incomplete or false information to avoid negative responses. In the case of IT 467, the group members would often communicate false or incomplete information about their progress on the project to the group leader. This ends up actually hurting everyone because the leader of the project is misinformed about the actual progress because the rest of the group members are in fear that there will be a negative reaction to the truth, which often is not the case. The burden of fixing this phenomenon falls on both group members and their higher-ups. Managers and bosses must think before they speak, as explained in the previous section, and refrain from taking out anger, frustration, or surprise on the messenger of the news. Instead, they should accept this new information and maybe talk it out with the messenger as opposed to being overly harsh to them, which leads for hurt in the workplace or anywhere. The elimination of these communication pitfalls will actually help the team function better and achieve maximum productivity.
There quickly proved to be a problem with the inter- and intra-group communications. Many of the groups engaged in unprofessional, vulgar, or offensive communication methods and unknowingly offended other team members, groups, and the instructor. In one case, there was a misunderstanding between a student group and the professor, causing the students to lose some of their hard work on their product. The student group communicated their frustrations inappropriately to the professor by yelling at him, and consequently, they lost their equipment privileges for the day. This not only hurt the relationship between the student group and the professor, but also set the group back in the long run. In this situation, one of the key principles of appropriate and professional communication referenced in the textbook by not thinking before they spoke. According to the text, our impulse is often to imitate movies by offering fast, witty replies on conversation. But in the real world, a care for silence can make us sound more intelligent and prevent mistakes. When speaking to a higher up or boss, one should always remain collected and respectful despite how they feel or are reacting to a situation. They made a common mistake of letting their emotions and frustrations speak for them, and acted on impulse by being angry with the professor, and it hindered their hard work. In this scenario, their consequence was a concrete solution. The group was not allowed to use the manufacturing equipment for the day, which ironically set them back even further in their production process. Furthermore, if they had thought before they spoke, they would have had the day to help make up some of the work they lost, instead of being further set back. Verbal communication can be risky, especially in high-stakes communications, such as approaching a professor after he or she had unknowingly taken apart your work. If the group had thought before approaching the professor in this high-stakes situation, the outcome would probably have been better for everyone, as the professor wouldn't have been offended, and the students would have been able to keep their equipment privileges. It would have been extremely simple for the group to calmly approach the professor and speak to him by reasonably voicing their opinions and discussing their issues with him, instead of approaching him aggressively, and in the long run, it would have helped the group.
IT 467 provides graduating students with the opportunity to form a simulation of a real-life business from ground up. Needless to say, real businesses require real communication and the ability to deal with communication barriers and obstacles and establish effective leadership. The students of IT 467 certainly ran into many issues that gave them a variety of opportunities to communicate in different ways. In particular, students encountered many situations that align with the lessons and lectures over the course of this fall quarter in organizational behavior. To narrow it down, students of IT 467 were faced with obstacles such as speaking up in a group and advocating oneself's strengths, shooting a messenger, or finding truthful ways of presenting unpleasant information that would cause hindrance in the group's manufacturing processes, and unprofessional communication, learning to control one's language, body language, and tone within a professional group setting. Additionally, many of these issues were tied to ineffective leadership within the groups, in which charismatic leadership was chosen despite the alternative needs of the group. Overall, this project was a wonderful way for students to be inundated with communication and leadership challenges that will undoubtedly be present when they graduate and obtain real-life jobs that will not be as forgiving. By learning these skills and techniques now, their learned by doing experience was far more comprehensive as they fully understood how effective organizations operate.